I'm Paul McGuire, and I want to give you an update, a prophetic update on what is happening in the geopolitical arena, specifically focusing in on the Ukraine, Syria, the international global financial system, and related geopolitical and economic factors. First of all, surrounding the nation of the Ukraine right now are about 100,000 Russian troops. Now, that is a significant military presence. In fact, there was far less a presence at the very beginning stages of World War II. So what looms on the horizon is the possibility of a World War III. That's a very, very real dynamic which could happen at any moment. Miscalculation, somebody fires a nuke, all kinds of things can happen. So here we have the Ukraine, formerly under the dominion, if you will, of Nazi Germany during World War II. And in the Ukraine, by the way, there still exists the human infrastructure, if you want to use that term, of the former Nazi soldiers that were recruited and trained by Nazi Germany using Ukrainian men. That structure, although somewhat dormant, has been reactivated, so that the core of what is termed the popular resistance movement in Ukraine to the Russian threat is composed of, to varying degrees, what would be called a neo-Nazi resistance. And there are many reasons for that. One would be that they are the most trained and organized military force that NATO, the U.S., Great Britain, and other nations might be interested in financing to counteract what they perceive as the Russian threat. Now, that's a very serious thing because this could ignite World War III. In addition, this possibility raises into view the Ezekiel 38 scenario, or what is known as the War of Gog and Magog. And as Russia rises in power, and many analysts believe that this is going to be the first of a successive series of moves by Russia to capture back former Soviet Union bloc nations. So Russia might take back part of the Ukraine. Hypothetically, it could take back part of Poland, certain Scandinavian countries, and Eastern European countries. And that would be a serious geopolitical threat. And one of the reasons it's a serious geopolitical threat is that all great military generals throughout history understood that the nation that controls what is called Eurasia controls the world. Now, Eurasia is a term for all of Europe and the Asian nations and the Middle Eastern nations combined. It's looked at as a group or one entity. And the idea is the nation that controls Eurasia controls the world. And every high-level military planner understands this. In addition, when we read the book of Ezekiel, especially chapters 38 to 39, we read about the Ezekiel 38 scenario where Russia, or Rosh, leads a coalition of forces, an alliance with Middle Eastern nations such as Persia or modern Iran, Turkey, some believe potentially Germany, and then other Islamic nations, in what is referred to as a mad dash to the south. The bear, which is a type of Russia or a symbol of Russia, The bear moves south because directly north of Jerusalem is Russia. And it moves with a massive army, and it invades Jerusalem and Israel in the last days. In Ezekiel 38, verse 2, it says, "Son of man, set your face towards Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, Tubal, and prophesy against him." Now, the term Gog refers to some kind of powerful spiritual being, perhaps a cosmokratos, which is a ruling territorial spirit over Russia and that region. Just as when you read the prophet Daniel, you read about territorial spirits or the cosmokratos, which rule certain Middle Eastern regions. So when Daniel was fasting and praying and seeking God's face, the angel, Michael, the archangel, had a message for him. And the archangel Michael had a message for the prophet Daniel. And then there was the powerful angel Gabriel. And there was a conflict between these powerful angels of God with a cosmokratos, or these powerful demonic territorial spirits. One is known as the Prince of Persia, referred to in the book of Daniel. And the Prince of Persia would be the Prince of Iran. And it is a ruling principality and power at the very highest level, a cosmokratos, which rules over Iran and the Middle East. It controls it, and it controls it up until this very time period that we now live in. Working in conjunction with this Prince of Persia is what is referred to as the Prince of Greece. So the Bible very clearly talks about a hierarchy of demonic fallen angels under the rulership of Lucifer that have assignments that include all kinds of things, including the domination, if you will, of geographic locations and nations. Conversely, the nation of Israel is protected not only by God himself, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but the nation of Israel is protected by Michael, the archangel, and one of Michael's primary responsibilities is to guard and protect Israel. Now, in my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, I go into detail regarding all that I just discussed with intensive further documentation as to where this is leading in terms of Bible prophecy. Remember that the nation of Israel is God's prophetic supersign, and it is the prophetic calendar that God has chosen to use. Now, I want to add at this point, because there's many people who are militantly anti-Israel, and they say God can't possibly use the nation of Israel because modern Israel is atheistic, immoral, and involved in all kinds of things that would displease God. And to whatever degree that may be true, as it would be true of the United States of America, or certainly any of the European Union nations, or Russia, or whatever. But they miss a very, very important point. Just like our salvation is not contingent upon our good works, we're saved through grace, unmerited favor, and we get into heaven based on grace, unmerited favor. Israel has a sovereign election by God to be his chosen people for a specific assignment, which began with the mandate from God to bring a light to the pagan world through obeying and demonstrating the reality of the law of God. Now, as we look at the history of Israel, we see they did a horrible job many times in being faithful to that call. And so the story of Israel is the story of a cycle of judgments and blessings outlined in Deuteronomy 28, where you see the first half of the chapter is the blessings that come upon Israel because they obey God and they don't worship idols. And if they diligently hearken unto the voice of the Lord their God, and they worship the true God, God promises enormous blessings, not just spiritual blessings. When you read Deuteronomy 28, you see their economic, sociological, agricultural, food supply, weather blessings. It's very detailed. But in the second half of the chapter of Deuteronomy 28, we see the curses that come upon the nation of Israel if they worship false gods and disobey the word of God and the commandments of God. And there you see in detail the specific curses that come upon the nation. Economic curses, health curses among the people. Their enemies will be raised up to destroy them and bring them into captivity. Illegal aliens will take over their possessions. And it's very specific. So that was Israel's responsibility. But when you see when God first gives the law to the nation of Israel, when Moses came down with the Ten Commandments, only to encounter the rebellious children of Israel relatively recently delivered from captivity under the Pharaoh God King system, where they were serving as slaves under Pharaoh, and miraculously delivered by God. And that deliverance included parting the Red Sea and leading the children of Israel into freedom. And then the Red Sea closes back on the chariots of Pharaoh and Pharaoh himself, and a supernatural destruction of Israel's enemies and a supernatural deliverance of God's people. But what people don't understand is that the nation of Israel, when you look at their history, when they obeyed God, they prospered and they flourished. But what would usually happen is that they would become proud and self-reliant in their prosperity. And then they would disobey God. They would break the laws of God. They would behave exactly like the pagan nations. They would actually worship the pagan gods like Moloch. They would participate in the pagan sexual orgies and satanic ceremonies, which is exactly what they were doing, by the way, when they molded out of gold a golden calf, which was the symbol of an Egyptian god. And the children of Israel were having a sexual orgy and a satanic worship ceremony right at the very time Moses is coming down with the law of God. Now, when that happens, when Israel disobeyed God and followed foreign gods, God would raise up prophets to warn them. And that was an act of his mercy. But if they ignored the prophets, then God would allow a foreign nation to be raised up, a heathen nation, to bring them into captivity and slavery. And they would be held in captivity and slavery until God deemed it necessary to give them another chance out of his mercy, and he would raise up a deliverer and bring them back into the promised land, or the land of Canaan, or the land of Israel. And we see that pattern throughout